Like a balloon. But, next slide. What we see is that it wasn't fused either here or here because this is the inside. We've got a camera up inside shooting this way of this place right here. See it right there. And you can see the light coming through in different spots. It's clearly not fused. It's not just locked like that. It's normal. This is normal suturing. That is too. Next slide. Now, last but not least, look at the vein tracts. When your brain presses up, you could say, okay, there's two kinds of hydrocephaly. There's water in the brain and there's water on the brain. Water on the brain being the more common. But you can have sometimes water leaking out in the brain. But water on the brain is the normal standard thing. Well, you see here, you've got these vein tracts where the brain presses up into the soft bone and leaves the tracts. Perfectly normal. And you see the same thing with the Starchild. They're just in a different place in a different way, but there they are. No water on the brain. Moron level. Moron level. And mainstream science can't figure it out. Next slide. Okay, progeria. This is their new favorite because really, I make them pay for that cradle-boarded hydrocephaly. I make them look really stupid. So they've come up with this one as an alternative, progeria. Now, in typical progeria victims, their bones do thin out. Because progeria is that disease where you're born and you immediately start getting old. You start aging rapidly and dramatically and you die about the age. If you make it to 15, you have really done well as a progeria victim. All right? So as you can see, this kid will be, what, 3? And it's already clear that he's on his way, unfortunately. But that's true, the bones do thin out. So this is why the mainstream jumped on it. Well, the Starchild has those thin bones, progeria victims have thin bones, but they don't take into account, next slide, that the Starchild's bone is so much harder. Now, yes, it is thin. Look how much thinner it is. And yet, when you cut this, and I have with a handsaw, you can cut through this, and it isn't easy, I mean, it's bone. But this is like cutting sheet metal by comparison to this. This is really, really hard stuff. Hard stuff, 2 or 3 times or more. We don't really know. We don't know how to scale it. I can just tell you from cutting it. And everybody that's cut it, I'm not the only person doing it, 5 people have cut it, all say the same thing. God damn, that's hard. And it is. I mean, there's just no other way to say it. It is really hard. Okay, next slide. Progeria victims have greatly reduced lower faces, and so does the Starchild. And this is another thing they say. Well, it's got the thin bones, it's got the thin face. Progeria victim, right? Next slide. No, you'll see this in a minute. But it's not the same skull shape. It's not the same skull at all. It's got the normal brow ridge and nose. It's got the inion back there. It's just not. It's not. A progeria victim is still a human, a very unfortunate human, but a human nonetheless, with all of the human traits. Their eyes will go into the depth. Their eyes don't do this, or their eyes would bug out like frog eyes because there wouldn't be any room in there for a normal eyeball. So you got normal eyes, they got normal human physiology that the Starchild just doesn't have. Next slide. And last but not least, progeria victims nearly always have an open fontanelle. It doesn't close. And of course the Starchild has perfectly normal fontanelle. Not progeria. Next slide. How do internet critics, skeptics, and trolls explain away the Starchild? It was cradle-boarded hydrocephalus progeria, and if that one rolled up a little bit, you would see none of the above. The answer is none of the above. None of that's true. None of that. Next slide. So if the Starchild skull was not a deformity or a combination of deformities, and it was not caused by typical cradle boarding or hydrocephaly or progeria, then what the, as my father used to say, blankety blank was it? What the hell was it? All right, next slide. This is an image by Roy Menzies, which is a fusion of X-ray and drawing to fit what was there. A very clever way, I think, to go about doing it. Next slide. This is a cover image of the book Communion versus the Starchild by Roy, and again, this was his final product after he shaped that face. Now, this is the prototypical gray alien, but Bud Hopkins told me one time after seeing this, he says, this cover we use when we talk to abductees He says, we'll put that in front of them and we'll say, is this what you saw? And if they say, oh yeah, that's exactly what I saw, he says, we know that person is probably stretching it because this was put on that cover to sell books. It wasn't put on the cover to be dramatic. In fact, Whitley Strieber himself argued to the publisher not to put that. He said, but that doesn't look anything like them. He said, yeah, but it'll scare the hell out of everybody and it'll sell you books. And it did. It's one of the most arresting book covers. You know, it just sold millions of copies off of that cover staring out at you out of a book rack. And so Bud says this looks much more like when we hear them described by people who are genuine abductees, it's much more like this than like that. Next slide. So forensic sculptor Bill Munns, this is another guy, made a clay model of how the Starchild might have looked when alive. And this is it from both angles. Next slide. Let's see. Now this is where we find out if it works or not. Yes! Animation of the Starchild sculpture. And you see Bill putting it together. Now the neck's a little, in my opinion, too big. The eyes are ridiculous because he had to cut that. When I saw it, I said, Bill, what are you doing with those eyes? Those eyes look like normal. I said, you couldn't put an eyeball in there, a human eye, because you have eyeballs to make. He said, oh yeah, you're right, the eye looked like a big frog eye sticking off there. It didn't work at all. And I said, well, what did you do? And he said, I just cut it in half. And I said, well, you know, the eye isn't at all accurate. He says, yeah, but Lloyd, you can't have real human eyes in those eye sockets. If it's got eyes, they have to look something like this, you know. So, and the neck's a little wide. He couldn't live with that little pipe stem neck. So it looks like it's just going to break off, you know, and he didn't want to have the neck break off, bump it accidentally and break off or something like that. But anyway, so now hit it again. Animation redux, now that you know about the eye. Now watch the half eye socket. You see the half eyeballs in there? And the little neck he fleshes out. But that's still pretty cool. Now, a lot of people ask, you know, me, do you think it's possible that the Starchild could ever, you know, be among us, or somebody like the Starchild? Would we know it? Next slide. And I guess, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself there. Proportional analysis, no, that's it. You were okay, right here. This is really cool, and I forgot that I added this just recently. Proportional analysis of Starchild face by Chris Murphy. And what he says is that our faces are really built interestingly. Our eyes are at the 50% mark. The tips of our nose are at 25% of what's left, and then our mouth is at 12.5%, 12.5% to our chin. Our faces have pretty good balance within percentages. The Starchild's nothing like that. It's 57% down, 11% instead of 25, 15% instead of 12.5, 70% instead of 12. Anyway, it's very, you know, different. The facial proportions are very different. Now the thing was, can they move around us? Okay, there you go, next slide. Can they move around us? I have Vivian to thank for that. She came.
Yeah, but Paul McCartney is the wrong Paul McCartney.
Yeah, that's right.
That could be. It could be the wrong one, yeah.
Not the real one in the middle.
Next slide. Okay, two things found in the Starchild bone. Now this is really interesting. Two things found in the Starchild bone are not found in the bones of any other creatures on Earth that are known at this point. Unknown fibers are embedded in the matrix of its bone, and unknown red residue is in its cancellous holes. You'll see both. Next slide. This is the fibers, and this is the cancellous holes, and this is just a piece of the bone that you saw, that we cut out, that you saw. And when you look at it under a microscope, this is what you see. You see these fibers dangling out of the holes and strung around it, and they are unbelievably durable themselves, because that's a Dremel blade. You see these things here? That's a Dremel blade doing it, you know, making these cuts, and yet they're resisting the cut of the Dremel blade. So that tells you how strong they are. And they are embedded in the matrix of the bone like rebar through concrete. Now we're going to see some up close. Next slide. We'll see this knot up close. Next slide. You see this knot here, that knot there, and then we see these two over here up close, and we see that they're different. But here you see, what's important to see is it's coming out of this track of the bone here, and it got snapped up here, and it seems to have been pushed up through here, and this thicker kind got wrapped around it in a way that we can't imagine. It's like how a magician did it or something, I don't know. But anyway, and you see a different kind, but these things are in the matrix of this bone. And what they do is they add to the strength of the the collagen, the heavy collagen, that's reinforced with that. Why does it need such strength in such thin bone? Who knows? And it might have to do with intergalactic travel or something like that. We do know that when our people are up on the space station, their bones weaken, and one of the first things that happens when they come back is they find that their eye sockets have shrunk a bit. Mm-hmm. Everybody comes back seeing a little different if they've been in there 3 months or more. Their eye sockets start to shallow, the humans. And you see the Starchild with its shallow eye socket. So there's something about being in space that does that. Really weird. Okay, next slide. This is another isolated flat fiber. This is yet another kind of fiber. We just don't understand these fibers, but we do know that they didn't just grow on it because the bone was, it was just come off the thing and they were there. So it isn't, we have mycologists look at it as not anything bacteria, fungi, mold, nothing like that. They're there. And this is, you can see a frayed piece right here where this piece got hit by the Dremel blade. Instead of cutting it, it just frayed. Strong stuff, whatever that is. Next slide. And this you see a perfect shot on the inner part of the bone of it lying in the matrix, so that there's just no argument that this stuff is in the matrix of the bone. Next slide. Now this is the reddish residue we're going to look at. And this is chips of bone cut but not polished. This is where you cut them, but we haven't polished either one, the human or the Starchild. And you see how much milkier it looks because it's got that much higher collagen content. Next slide. You see the human bone when it's polished, and this is the same piece of bone, but that hole is that hole, this hole is this hole. So you see, and that's the outer, and this is the inner surface of it. But you see that in the course of death, when you die and when you're decomposing, in the natural course of events, you are carrying bacteria in your body that is designed to wait until you die and clean you out. Just clean you out. And it will clean out your not your collagen, your, what's in the marrow, sorry, marrow, thank you, Gary, thank you. It will clean out your bone marrow like you see right here, to the point where you can eat out of it. I mean, it's just beautiful. This was, to me, it looks like alabaster, but it was very carefully polished, like with lapidary tools, like jewelers polish it. And this is what you get. And it's really nice. And this is how you see, there's not a shred of marrow left anywhere. It shouldn't be, and it isn't with the human. Next slide. Now with the Starchild, it's completely different. You've got this reddish residue all over the place. Now, that's not going to be blood marrow, because that's blood, and it's going to be black if it's when it's oxidized. It's something else, and we don't know what it is, and we just don't have the money. The problem with what we have is we have this incredible thing with all these neat things to find out, and we can't get the money to do anything with it because science doesn't want this answer. I've had this stuff out for 13, I'm on my 14th year now. Any of them could have come forward and said, we want to know too. They don't, because they don't want to know. They want to have me floundering out here as long as they can keep me away, they will. I'm going to beat them eventually. No, I am, but it's been a hard road. But this stuff is what keeps me going because I know it's for real. Next slide. Here you'll see another shot of it, backlit, so that you see plenty of it. It isn't just a fluke thing. Something going on here. We wish we knew what it was, but we don't. Next slide. Oh gosh, always tough. Anyway, dozens of physical differences when you can see this thing real. What I'm saying here is, what counts as DNA? All the physical stuff doesn't matter. We can stack physical stuff up to the roof. It isn't going to win. DNA will win. DNA is their tool. We can run, as I say, run the bastards through with their own sword. Just take it from them and run them through, and that's what we're going to do. So that's what that means. Next slide. And I'm going to go over the DNA now, and we're going to start. You've got to kind of put your thinking cap on here to understand some of this to get through it. Everything about the Starchild skull's case comes down to its DNA. DNA is a molecule of life. This is a cell.